Welcome. In this video, we're going to discuss some of the biological aspects of personality. We'll discuss the findings of the Minnesota study of twins reared apart and how they relate to personality, or what they found about personality and genetics. And then we'll discuss temperament and describe the 3 infant temperaments identified by Thomas and Chess. So one way to study the genetic contributions to personality is to look at something called heritability in a population. So this is central to the field of behavioral genetics, which tries to explain behavioral differences in people, such as individual personalities, based on genetic differences. So heritability can be defined as an actual statistical estimate of how much variation in a trait can be attributed to genetics within that given population. Now, we've come across this term before, and we'll probably come across it again before the end of the semester. It's important to remember that it's on a number from 0 to 1, so 0.5 meaning that about 50% of the variation in that trait can be attributed to genetics. And a 1 would mean that 100% of variation in that trait could be attributed to genetics. And also important to remember and remind ourselves that monozygotic twins, when we're talking about them, they have 100% genetic similarity, whereas dizygotic twins have 50% genetic similarity. So dizygotic twins or fraternal twins are no more similar than regular siblings in terms of genetics, but they did share a womb. Monozygotic twins or identical twins, they share all of their genes. All of their genes are the same because they started as a single egg and a single sperm that then split at some point during development. Now, in a classic study, the Minnesota study of twins reared apart, it started in 1979 with over 100 pairs of twins that were actually reared apart. So meaning they were twins, they shared a womb, they have either they were either monozygotic or dizygotic, but then they were separated at birth and reared by adoptive families in different environments. And they were compared with extensive physiological and psychological testing. So the study found that monozygotic twins reared apart were just as similar as monozygotic twins raised together in terms of personality. Now, although this does suggest a very strong genetic component to personality, it doesn't mean that there's not environmental influence, because often when children are placed in adoptive homes, they're placed in homes that are very similar. But the findings of this study, as well as other studies, suggest that the heritability of personality traits is about 0.5. Again, that means that about 50% of the variation in our personality traits can be attributed to genetics, meaning the other 50% is attributed to our environment. If you want to learn more about the Minnesota twin study, there'll be a link on the Canvas page for you. Another biological aspect to discuss when it comes to personality are temperaments. So if you have children or spent any time around infants, you know that they seem to really have a personality from the time they're born. And this personality often is something that carries through into adulthood. So a temperament is a physiological disposition to respond to the environment in certain ways. It's present in infancy, it's assumed to be innate, and it does seem to be relatively stable over time. And I have a picture of each of my children here because we'll see on the next slide that there are 3 different temperaments, and really, even though this picture doesn't quite address her personality as much, the other ones do. So Carrie was a very difficult, feisty child, as even indicated by her daycare and preschool teachers. Tyler was just kind of an easygoing kid. He's still pretty easygoing, although he's a little grumpy now that he's a teenager. And Cammie has always been a slow to warm. Of course, this picture makes her seem like this happy, outgoing little baby. She's great one-on-one or one-on-two, but she gets lost in a crowd of people, and she's just more slow to warm. She just takes time. You have to kind of prep her for things, and that's what we'll discuss here on the next slide. So again, that easy, flexible disposition or temperament. This individual has a positive disposition. They're curious about new situations. They're adaptable. They have a low to moderate emotional intensity. And this is about 40% of babies. So again, Tyler was a very easy, flexible baby. He just kind of went with the flow. Anyone could hold him. He'd be happy to sit in his little car seat on the floor. Super flexible, super easy. A difficult, feisty child is one that has negative moods. They're slow to adapt to new situations. And this is about 10% of babies. And it's a little bit more than just, Carrie didn't really have negative moods as much as she just was always very strong-willed. And she wanted to do things her own way. Now, a slow to warm child is one that, kind of withdraws from new situations, might have a negative mood within a new situation. They adapt really slowly. So this is the kid that, when they wake up from a nap, they take a little while to wake up. They need to lay in bed and take their time. Like I said, with Camille, we always have to make sure we're telling her in advance, like, okay, this is what we're doing tomorrow. She doesn't like surprises by any means. And so slow to warm is about 15% of babies. And so within these temperaments, you have the idea of how reactive the baby is, which refers to how excitable they are, their soothability, how easy they are to calm down when they're upset, their positive and negative emotions. And the idea with this stability of these temperaments over time is that an excitable baby, one that tends to overreact and be overstimulated easy, might be a little bit more fearful of new things as a toddler. At 7, might show a little anxiety. But again, from watching my own kids, I can't necessarily say that temperament is black or white. But the ideas behind temperament is that this temperament is present pretty much from birth and is generally stable over time.